friendship that'll never ever end.
Run!
It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. Reaction Beanie Yo 567. That in that neighborhood. My brothers and sisters, I can finally announce y'all that our very first live stream is gonna be with Jose Ortiz from Evil Intentions. Our first live stream, y'all, we're gonna have Jose Ortiz from Evil Intentions with us. And as of now, we have it scheduled for next Saturday. But that is subject to change. That may change, y'all. But best believe, Bean Team, that I'm gonna let you know days ahead of time, the actual time and date when we gonna do the damn thing. But I digress. I hope y'all doing excelente out there today. And I'm glad that you came on back to the channel once again. Fuck with the bean. And today, it is Sunday. So y'all know that we about to go back to the man. We about to go back to the myth. We about to go back to the legend. MrBallen. MrBallen Sundays, y'all. And the title of the video is The Most Terrifying Night in the Woods Story I've Ever Told. Now that's a bold freaking statement coming from MrBallen, man. All the freaking crazy, terrifying in the woods stories he have told. You know what I'm saying, man? I don't know where we're about to go in this video, Bean Team, but I'm ready to go. But before we go, y'all know what y'all got to do. Get whatever you may need. Get what you need, please. We are back to the man, the myth, the legend, MrBallen. Y'all got what y'all need. Y'all ready to go? Then let's go.
Today's story is a classic, scary cabin in the forest story, but with a very big plot twist at the end. But before we get into that story, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right place because that's all we do and we upload once a week. So if that's of interest to you, the next time the like button is looking to adopt a pet, tell them you just rescued a puppy and you'd love for them to adopt it. And when they say yes, go ahead and drop your puppy off, but don't tell them that your puppy is actually a hangry saltwater crocodile. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. Okay, let's get into today's story. On the night of October 17th, 2019, a 47-year-old woman named Ada Quintal stepped out of her family's cabin in rural Michigan to take her dog for a walk and have a smoke. It was very late. It was about 1:30 in the morning. Now, this cabin where she was staying was very isolated. It was about a half mile away from any neighbors, but Ada actually enjoyed the solitude. You know, she was surrounded on all sides by forest and swamps, and the wilderness actually made Ada feel a lot safer than when she was back home in the densely populated Detroit area where she lived full-time. And this was because just a few months earlier, when she had been back home in Detroit, she had been the victim of an unprovoked attack. She had been out in the city around all these people in broad daylight, and this guy came up to her and just jumped her, broke her nose, gave her a concussion, and then ran off. But the scariest part of this attack was not the fact that she had been brutalized. It was that this guy did not appear to have any reason to attack her. He didn't know Ada, and Ada had not been robbed or anything. It was like he just randomly identified her and attacked her. and the guy had never been caught. And so this ordeal had had such a profound impact on Ada that it really began to affect her health, both mentally and physically. She started to just kind of decline, and on top of that, she had been laid off from her engineering job, and so now she was unemployed and seriously depressed.
Okay, I just gotta point out, y'all, I think that whoever attacked Ada for this unknown freaking reason, you know what I'm saying? He didn't even rob her. He just literally just attacked her. I feel like that person, that stranger, whoever it is gonna come back later on in this story. So y'all just remember that part. Let's go.
So recently, when Ada's uncle had called her and offered to pay her to come out and live in this 2-story family cabin and fix it up for the winter, Ada had jumped at the chance. I mean, not only would this solve her unemployment issue, but also she loved this cabin. It had been in her family for 75 years, and some of her fondest childhood memories were in this cabin. And so she looked at this as a chance to kind of get away from the city and just be in her happy place and kind of reset and recover from the trauma of the attack. And so for the past week, Ada and her boyfriend had been staying in this cabin and doing small repairs and cleaning it up. But 2 days earlier, her boyfriend had to leave and go back to the city where they were actually fixing up another property, a condo. And so now it was just Ada and her dog. But that was totally fine with Ada. She liked being out here by herself, so this was no big deal. But tonight, she was feeling frustrated because she couldn't sleep. About an hour earlier, she had taken a pill to help her sleep, but so far it hadn't worked, and so she was feeling kind of wired and anxious. And so she had decided to go on a walk with her dog in hopes that that would clear her mind and allow her to finally get some rest. Now, these roads that surrounded this cabin were kind of small and zigzaggy, and, there weren't any street lights. I mean, this is not exactly a good place to go for a nighttime walk. But Ada knew this place like the back of her hand, and she also carried a 9mm pistol in her pocket, just for protection. And so after walking for a few minutes down one of these dark, winding roads, Ada's dog stopped to relieve himself on a bush. So as the dog was going to the bathroom, Ada just casually smoked and waited. But at some point, the dog just stopped going to the bathroom, turned slightly, and began growling, and its ears perked up, and it was looking off into the darkness right ahead of them. And so Ada instinctively took her flashlight and raised it up and aimed it in the direction her dog was looking. And right away, the cone of light illuminated these 2 eyes looking right back at Ada. And immediately Ada knew what she was staring at. It was a mountain lion. So doing her best to stay calm, Ada slowly reached into her pocket to pull out her gun, but before pulling it out, the 2 eyes blinked shut, and then she heard it kind of turn and run off into the forest. It was gone. Once Ada was...
Okay, now that the damn mountain lion ran away, guess what we need to do, Ada? Me and the damn dog, guess what we doing? We going back to the freaking house. You know what I'm saying, man? No, that was a warning sign. Now, I hope she about to turn around and go back to this house. Even though I'm already feeling a little queasy and uneasy, just the fact that she out in the middle of freaking nowhere by herself, her husband or her boyfriend or whoever then went back to the city, and she out here with just her and her dog. But oh man, I just hope she turn around now. That was a warning sign.
Sure, the mountain lion really was gone. She breathed a sigh of relief and then very quickly tugged on her dog's leash. They turned around and she hustled back towards the cabin. When Ada reached her cabin, which was all lit up because she had left all the lights on before she had left, she jumped up the front steps, she opened up the door, she went inside with her dog, and after letting her dog off the leash, she shut and locked the door. Then she grabbed her phone and texted her boyfriend to tell him about this mountain lion. And then after hitting send, Ada felt relieved to be back in her cabin, but at the same time, she still felt very on edge. I mean, she had been, just a few feet away from a mountain lion in the middle of the night, in the middle of nowhere. But as Ada was doing her best to calm herself down, she heard this noise coming from outside the living room window, almost like twig snapping, like somebody was walking past the window. And so the way this cabin was set up is when you first walked inside, you were in the kitchen, and then the back half of the cabin was a living room, and then there were also stairs leading up to a second floor. But from in the kitchen, you had a clear line of sight into the living room, and vice versa. It was kind of like one big room with 2 functions. And so from where Ada was standing in the kitchen, she could clearly see the window in the living room where this noise had kind of come through. But because the inside of the cabin was all lit up and the outside was dark, from her perspective, all she could see was a reflection on that window. So to look outside that window to see what had made that noise, she would need to get right up next to the window. And so feeling pretty nervous at this point, she walked across the cabin, she made her way towards this window, and then she pressed her face right up against the glass to look outside. But all she saw outside was just darkness. I mean, there was nothing out there. And so Ada stepped back from the window and started to wonder if maybe the sound she had just heard was maybe that mountain lion. Maybe it followed her back here. That was terrifying, but at least she was inside. But also she was thinking to herself, mountain lions are not known for being aggressive towards humans, and they wouldn't come up to her cabin like this and prowl around outside. That's just not what mountain lions do. But Ada didn't really have any other explanation, and so she told herself, it's gotta be nothing, there's nothing out there, this is a safe place. And so she kind of forgot about the noise, and she took off her coat and put her stuff down, and then she sat down on the couch in the living room, turned on the TV, and tried to relax. But
I don't think that's an animal at all. Mountain lion, freaking black bear. I don't think it's an animal. I think that's a person.
Only about 20 minutes later, when Ada had finally relaxed and was even thinking about getting into her bed and going to sleep, she heard another noise coming from that same window in the living room. And this time, when she looked up and looked out that window, despite the reflections inside the cabin, she could clearly tell there was something moving outside of her cabin. And it was definitely not a mountain lion. It looked like a man. And so Ada had to stifle a scream, and then instinctively she lunged for her gun on the coffee table, and then darted behind the couch and crouched down to make sure whoever was out there couldn't see her. And then, with gun in hand, she began calling out to the person out there that, hey, I'm armed. If you come in here, I'm going to shoot you. But it was just silence. And then Ada strained her ears to try to hear any sound that would give away where this person went. Were they still outside that window? Had they moved somewhere else? But all she could hear was the sound of the wind whipping outside and an owl hooting off in the distance. But then, right as Ada was starting to wonder, did I really see somebody out there? Is this all in my head? That's when she heard the distinct sound of footsteps on her front porch.
Oh.
And so again, Ada had to stifle a scream, and she darted to the other side of the couch, preventing the person from the front of the house to seeing her now. Then she grabbed her phone and she was dialing 911, and she was about to hit call when she stopped herself. And she began to wonder, am I just totally overreacting here? I don't know if there's somebody out there. I could be hearing things. Or maybe it's just like an animal or something. And also, deep down, Ada knew that ever since that attack in Detroit that summer, that basically everything scared her. And she was starting to wonder if maybe she was just being totally paranoid and there was nothing going on. And she didn't want to embarrass herself by calling 911 and having them come out here and finding nothing. And so Ada decided she would call her boyfriend, and so she called her boyfriend, and as the phone is ringing, she's listening intently for any other footsteps outside, but she can't hear anything. And then her boyfriend, he didn't pick up. It's also like 2:30 in the morning at this point, but her boyfriend doesn't answer. And so after that, she tries calling one of her friends, and her friend does pick up. And right away, Ada just began telling this friend about all the things that had happened that night, from going out and seeing the mountain lion, and then coming back in, hearing the sound, and now hearing the footsteps on the front porch. And, she was worried that maybe she was just making it all up, but she was still really scared. And even though Ada was trying to be composed as she was telling her friend, her voice began to crack and she began to cry because she really was scared. And the friend just said, look, I'm going to call the police on your behalf. It seems like it's worth having them come out just to make sure you're really okay. Give me the address and I'll tell them where to go. And so Ada would give her friend the address, but she told the friend, thank you, but do not call right now. Just please stay on the phone for a minute and let me just do a quick investigation. Let me look out the windows, and just really make sure that this is nothing before you call the police. And so the friend said, okay, look around, but then I'm calling the police. And so with her phone and her gun in hand, Ada very carefully crept out from behind the couch, keeping a low profile, staying below the sight line of all the windows. And she crept from the living room into the kitchen towards the front of the house. And she walked over to the sink and she very slowly raised her head until she could just barely peek through the window right above the sink that overlooked the front porch. Because remember, that was the last place she had heard sounds, from the front porch.
Yeah.
And so she very carefully peeks and looks out the window. And there's nothing there. Nobody's on the porch. It's just empty, dark forest. She's safe. Ada let out a relieved half cry, half laugh, and then stood all the way up and felt totally ridiculous because clearly she had just imagined, all these people wandering around the outside of her house. And so she was about to tell her friend that, hey, sorry, there is no issue here, don't call the police. But before she could get the words out, Ada happened to turn around and was looking back towards the living room, and she froze. Because there, in that same window she had heard those sounds coming from in the living room, was now the silhouettes of two men, clear as day, just looking in the window right at Ada. And so actually...
Two? Not one, my brothers and sisters, but it's two of these crazy out there. And if it's two, it might be three. This why I understand why she may be thinking that she tripping, that her mind playing tricks on her. But I just feel like from the very beginning, she should have never doubted herself and just dialed 911 and have the police come out. You know what I'm saying, man? I understand because of her and you know what? One of these two people may be the damn man who attacked her back in the city. Because I was about to say, I understand that, you know, her previous incident back in the city with that stranger has made her probably a little more paranoid than usual. But one of the damn men she looking at right now might be that man. I don't know, y'all. I just wish she would have called the police. But let's see where we're about to go now.
Acting purely on instinct, Ada just raised her gun and aimed it at these two men, and to her horror, the two men also raised guns and aimed them right back at Ada. And so Ada just started firing her gun at the window, and these men began shooting back at her, and right before Ada leapt to the ground, she was pretty sure she hit one of the men in the head with one of her rounds, and so she lands on the ground. It's absolute pandemonium at this point, and her friend, who's still on the phone, is screaming like, "What's going on? What's going on?" And all Ada could think to do was yell out, "There's two men, they're shooting at me, I think I shot one of them." And the friend is screaming, "I'm gonna call the police." And then the line goes dead, and Ada, who's crouched down behind the kitchen island at this point, she realizes all the shooting has stopped. It's now dead silent in the cabin. And so for a second, Ada was thinking to herself, maybe I managed to shoot both of them, and that's why it's quiet right now. But then another thought began to enter her head, that maybe she had only shot one of them, and the other survivor was moving into position to maybe ambush her. And so as she's running through what she's gonna do, she hears this horrible, loud thumping sound right above her in the second floor of the cabin.
Oh!
Now, Ada knew at this moment she should just get her dog and run. Because if this second shooter has survived and has now come into her cabin and is upstairs, that means the forest is now clear and she can make a run for it. But as she sat there by the island, still clutching her gun, in this beloved family cabin of hers, she began thinking about the fact that ever since that attack in Detroit over the summer, that had totally wrecked her life and made her scared of everything. And so as she heard the sound of whoever this was marching around in her second floor, she made a decision. She was going to stand her ground and fight. And so she took a deep breath, she stood up, and with gun in hand, she made her way to the stairs and began to go up.
But if this ain't straight out of a horror / true crime movie, you know what I'm saying? What the freak, my brothers and sisters? And we at MrBallen commercial. But I gotta throw this out there, y'all, because I know some of y'all thinking it too. What if her damn boyfriend is in on this? I'm just throwing it out there, man. This MrBallen, he come with the craziest twist type stuff ever. And the damn boyfriend may have been in on the whole attack that she had months ago or however long ago it was in the city by that stranger. He probably sent the damn stranger. Now it's the stranger and him who have showed up at her house or at the cabin or whatever. Y'all know what I'm talking about, man. I don't know. This one here is like a freaking horror action movie type with all the shooting they doing. I don't know where we going, y'all, but I'm excited to find out. Let's go, Bean Team.
The police arrived at the cabin about 30 minutes later because Ada's friend did call the police, and she warned them that as far as she knew, there could be at least 2 gunmen there, and maybe Ada had shot one of them. She wasn't sure. And so when the police arrived, they showed up, guns drawn, and they walked up to the cabin and they searched the outside, but there was nobody out there. It was silent. And then when they made entry into the cabin, they saw clearly there had been a shootout. I mean, there were bullet holes all over the place, broken windows, but after searching the cabin top to bottom, they didn't find anybody. No Ada, no shooters. However, they did find Ada's terrified dog inside of the cabin, and the dog would be just fine. Now, once the cabin was secured of any threats, the police would do another comprehensive search looking for any evidence that would kind of tell them, where Ada or these shooters had gone. And during this secondary search, they would find Ada's shoes and her cell phone on the roof of the cabin, and they would also find her gun on the ground not far from the roof, suggesting maybe she had fallen off the roof or jumped from the roof, but they were kind of located roughly in the same area. And during this secondary search, they wouldn't find Ada or the gunman, but they would find Ada's cell phone and her shoes on the roof of the cabin, and they would also find Ada's gun on the ground not far from where her shoes and cell phone had been found. But that was it. Police immediately launched a massive search in the forest surrounding the cabin, but despite looking all over the place, they could not find any signs of Ada or her attackers. Police checked local hospitals to see if maybe the man that Ada had shot had shown up seeking medical attention, but as far as they could tell, he hadn't. And so pretty quickly, the police theorized that maybe there were no gunmen. Maybe what really happened here is Ada's boyfriend attacked her, and he was responsible for whatever happened to her. But when police checked on Ada's boyfriend, it would turn out he had a rock-solid alibi. He had been with Ada's adult son at the time Ada had gone missing, and Ada's own son said, yes, for sure, he was with me. He did not do this. But after that, the police thought, okay, well, maybe if Ada's boyfriend didn't do this, maybe he hired other people to hurt Ada. But there was no evidence of any strange financial transactions, and as far as they could tell when they did some digging, there was no strife in Ada and her boyfriend's relationship. So there was no clear reason why he would want to hurt her. And so that lead also kind of fell flat. Police...
Okay, so MrBallen has debunked what I was saying earlier about maybe her boyfriend got something to do with it. Okay, but I'm still, at this point, y'all, I'm like, why? Who and why? Who are these strangers and why did they kidnap her? It seems like, you know what I'm saying? Like, what is the reason for this attack on Ada? Long story short, short story long.
Would confirm that Ada was attacked that previous summer by this random guy in Detroit, and so for a little while they speculated that, maybe this guy, this attacker, who had never been caught, had maybe tracked Ada down to finish off the job. But that seemed so far-fetched and just unlikely that basically was shut down as well. And as the days passed, the evidence that was coming in only made the case more confusing. For example, there were all these bullets fired during this big shootout in the cabin, and when they examined the actual bullets they extracted from the walls and the floor and the ceiling, they were all from Ada's gun. However, outside and inside the cabin, they found all these different shell casings, suggesting that those bullets had been fired from different weapons, i.e., maybe the attacker's weapons. And so as the weeks passed by and Ada and her attackers were not found, people began to speculate that, maybe this was all an elaborate setup by Ada just so she could disappear. Or other people thought maybe she was abducted by aliens. I mean, there were lots of theories surrounding this, but basically nobody knew what happened. And then pretty soon, the case just went completely cold. That is, until December 21st, 2019, so about 2 months after Ada's disappearance. And on that day, Ada's family decided to drain a pond that was near that cabin in the woods. At this point, the family was so desperate for closure that they were prepared to do just about anything to find Ada and to figure out what happened to her. And so even though this pond had previously been searched by the police, they drained this pond, and sure enough, they find Ada. She was deceased, and her body was found about 300 yards away from the cabin, and she was covered in only about a foot of water. Now, initially, the speculation was, well, here you go. She must have been chased out of her cabin by these attackers, and she was shot and killed, and this is where she fell. But after a quick examination of her body, it was clear she had no bullet wounds on her anywhere. In fact, she didn't even have any bruises on her or any major scrapes or cuts or anything, so it didn't even seem like she had been in any sort of physical struggle at all before she died. In fact, unless she had drowned, it really just seemed totally unclear how she had died. It was not until the medical examiner did Ada's autopsy that all this baffling evidence began to make sense. It would turn out, in the wake of that horrible random attack that Ada had suffered over the summer, that Ada was actually doing far worse than she let on to her family and friends. She had basically begun to cope with her trauma and anxiety with substance abuse. And so on the night that she had died, she was likely feeling totally stressed out and anxious, and she couldn't sleep as a result. And so she had taken some Valium, which is a fairly strong sedative, and also some anti-anxiety medication, but after taking those pills, she still wasn't tired. And so that was when she decided to, go out for a walk with her dog to clear her head and have a smoke. But it was not cigarettes that she was smoking. She was smoking methamphetamine, known simply as meth. And meth is a very strong stimulant that people like because it makes them feel very strong and confident and alert, which for Ada was a powerful antidote to the helplessness she was feeling all the time from the attack she had suffered that summer. But one of the many downsides of meth is that it can make you extremely paranoid. And so during her walk that night, as she's smoking meth, she sees a mountain lion, which terrifies her. And then after the mountain lion trots off, it was like that jolt of adrenaline and fear from seeing the mountain lion didn't subside because of smoking meth. It was like the meth sent her into this paranoia overdrive that she couldn't escape from. And so when Ada went back inside of her cabin, she very likely did see people in her windows. But almost certainly, it was just her own reflection. But again, she's in this meth-induced paranoid state. And so instead of realizing it was her own reflection, she thought it was like intruders coming to get her. And before long, she'd raised her gun and thought the people outside were raising their gun back at her. But again, it's just her reflection. And so when she was shooting, she was basically having a shootout with herself. And then
that is just crazy as hell, man, what those drugs can do to you. That lady was having a shootout with her own self, with her reflection.
As for, the strange noises she was hearing, like the footsteps on the second floor, very likely those were just natural sounds kind of happening outside. She's out in the middle of a forest. There's lots of noises that are totally natural at night. But again, she's in this paranoid state, and so she went upstairs to confront the person, and then didn't see anybody, and then police theorized that she must have, climbed out onto the roof to hide from these attackers, and then at some point, for reasons unknown, she leapt from the roof or climbed down or something, leaving behind her cell phone and shoes on the roof. She left her gun on the ground, and then she ran off into the forest, where she ultimately collapsed, 300 yards away in a foot of water, where she died not from drowning, but from a combination of hypothermia and also a toxic combination of drugs in her system. And so in the end, the danger that Ada was trying to escape was in her own mind.
That is freaking wild, man.
Before I became a professional...
That is freaking wild, y'all. She literally had a drug overdose, and right before she even OD'd, she went through like a episode, a crazy episode of thinking that people was trying to kill her, man. She started literally shooting at her reflection, and then got to the point where she jumped on the roof and really thought she was running away from somebody or somebody's, man, and it all was a freaking hallucination, y'all. Them freaking drugs like that meth, the heroin, the ice, the freaking the molly, you know what I'm saying, the crack, the cocaine, man, that stuff ain't nothing to play with, y'all. Please, my brothers and sisters, never even give it a try. Don't never even try nothing like that. I'm gonna give y'all a quick story real quick. I'm gonna make it a long story short, a short story long, and I have never told y'all about this, but y'all my brothers and sisters, and I'm just trying to paint a picture of how strong those drugs really are. Back in my early weed smoking days, and weed is not a drug. I argue any of y'all to death about that. That is not a drug. But I'm not gonna go all into that right now. Let me stay on my story. Back in my early weed smoking days, there was this one sack of weed that I got from a drug dealer, my weed man or whatever. And I don't know. And he wasn't my consistent weed man. He was another guy, you know what I'm saying, that I just tried out because I can't remember why, but I tried him out. I wanted to try his weed out, see how I smoked it, whatever. But I got this bag, and long story short story long, I did not know it at the time, but it was laced with cocaine. I didn't know it. I did not freaking know it. And this so long ago, y'all. This is, when I say this is my early weed days, I'm telling y'all all my goddamn life stories. But I'm gonna tell it since I done got this far, man. And I hope my mama don't hear me, because she gonna be like, what the freak? But this is all back when I was like 17, 18. I was still staying at my mama's house. So it was late at night. I had went out in the backyard, I had rolled it up in my room in my house. Get to my backyard, I'm out there, and I fire it up. I take two hits. I take two hits of what I think is just regular weed, but like I said, now I know it had to be laced with cocaine, or it may have been something else. But I took two hits of it, and I instantly became high. Like not no weed high, like out of your mind high, similar to this, y'all. Like I can't even explain what the fuck happened to me, but it just so happened that my mama was not there at the time. It was me, my friend, and my nephew. You know what I'm saying? My friend the same age as me, and my nephew like 2 years younger than me. So they the only two ones in the house. But long story short, story long, y'all, I was high as a mother freaker, man, and not in a good way. To the point where if my friend and my nephew would have not been there that day, I was about to literally, for whatever God knows reason, this just how much out of my mind I was. I was trying to take off all my clothes. I was trying to take all my clothes off. Maybe it was mixed with some bath salt or something, because we have learned about how bath salt make people want to take their clothes off. But I was trying to take all my clothes off, like get butt freaking naked and get up on top of the roof of our house and jump off. For whatever reason, I don't know why. I'm just telling y'all this story. Long story short, story long, man. The only reason I'm telling y'all this story to let y'all know that things like this story that MrBallen just told us about Ada is actually and it has happened out there, my brothers and sisters. I know that we was laced with something, man. I took 2 freaking hits and it just like my whole, like everything, like reality became something else. I don't even know how to freaking explain it. That's the one time I ever had that experience in my life, and I can't believe that I just told y'all. But I just told y'all because y'all the big team, y'all my brothers and sisters, and I just like to keep it real, man. I like to keep it real. But I digress. I'm gonna go let y'all go now. I appreciate y'all coming on back on another Sunday as always. But please, before you leave, just hit that like button, comment, subscribe, and do all that if you ain't did that yet. And I'll see y'all Tuesday. I don't know who we going to, but as y'all know, we gonna go. And until then, my friends, also, remember this. Love, peace, and happiness. Stay safe. Don't stop. Keep going. Yeah.